I was a rancher in Prescott. I grew up here. I went to serve in the Senate. It was a great time, but I can tell you it's changed down there. Ken can attest to this. It's changed a lot. The mood down there has gone from congenial to it is so partisan, and poor Darren's having a horrible time getting things done. So she's got 16 people that all think they're 15 that think they're the 16th vote, so she just can't get anything for a budget, and they can't get out of there until they have a budget. So anyways, thank you for joining us tonight. There are a few rules. The Yavapai County Republican Women require during the forum that we need to have everyone in respect of the audience here tonight. In the interest of time, we ask for no audience interruptions. Please, no applause, no cheering, holding up signs, or any other type of disruptive behavior. I have a secret message from the Arizona Rangers that if it gets rowdy and I do this, they're going after you. So, and it's just my right ear. So, and we're going to have them enforced. We've invited 2 U.S. Marshals who are attending tonight. We really want everyone to relax and have a good time and enjoy the evening. That's like the sign that says, welcome to the ranch, no trespassing. Okay, of the candidates, we expect you will concentrate on helping us get to know you through your thoughtful and respective answers. Please, no attacks on other candidates, either on or off the stage. We look forward to hearing your answers to persuade us on how you will represent us on the serious issues we face. There are white cards on each table that you can fill out a question for later, and if you have questions, those will be gathered and given to Lucy Mason, and Lucy will pass them up here for after the question and answer, or when we get to the question and answer. So, what did I forget, Lucy? Here we go. Connie Martin is our timekeeper. Thank you, Connie. We ask candidates need to watch the lights. There's green, yellow, and red to indicate the time allowed for each answer. Candidates will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes for a closing statement, and 3 minutes to answer each question. Please stick to that 3 minutes. Candidates will be given 1 opportunity for a rebuttal or correction if necessary, but 1 minute only. Candidates, please remember to watch those lights, no filibustering. We'll now start the candidates' opening statements. If they would come on up, Karen and Steve, if you'd come join me on the stage. Now you're going to start calling me, hey, Joe. So, welcome to the stage. Welcome to Prescott. Glad you're here, Scott, Karen. So, let's start with the opening statements. I think, Karen, you have the opening statement. You first. Scott will follow you. 2 minutes.
And thank you. And first, I want to say thank you to the Yavapai County Republican Women for inviting Scott to come here tonight. He is a legitimate candidate on the ballot, and this is the first time I've been able to share a forum with him. So thank you very much. I'm Karen Taylor-Robson, and I'm running for governor because our borders are overrun. We're being invaded from the south, and we're under attack from Washington, D.C. I'm a native Arizonan. I'm a lifelong Republican and an unapologetic conservative. The first scholarship I ever got was from the Mesa Republican Women to go to the 1984 Republican Convention in Dallas, Texas for President Reagan. It was a big deal to me. The Republican women have a great spot in my heart. I grew up in Mesa, Arizona, in a very simple family. My father was the hometown pharmacist. So I grew up by his side, watched him work. I learned the value of hard work at a very young age. I put myself through Arizona State University. Last year of my college career, I was student body president, which is not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, but it paved the way for me for my first job out of college, and that was working for Ronald Reagan at the White House. Ronald Reagan, as you can imagine, was a big deal for me as a young woman out of college. From there, I worked for two governors, Governor Kayor in Nebraska, returned to Arizona where I worked for Governor Fife Symington. And I'm very proud that Governor Symington and Governor Jan Brewer are the co-chairs of my campaign. They have both known me for an awful long time. Governor Brewer since I was about 12 years old. So she reminds me all the time that if I get out of line, she knows where to come find me and put me back in line. Everybody thought I was going to run for office. Instead, I put myself through law school, and the last 28 years I was in the private sector, working on the other side of government, helping people with their property obtain permits to do things with their land. So I know firsthand issues like water and transportation and land use and environment and tax policy. I don't need on-the-job training. If you want to see what that looks like, look no further than Kamala Harris. So I will serve this state well. I am an unapologetic conservative. I believe our rights came from God, not the government. And I'm a fiscal and constitutional conservative. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you doing that.
So, my name is Scott Neely. Most of you may not have heard of me because, as you know, the media doesn't report that I'm even a candidate for governor. Thank you for reporting that for me. I really appreciate it, Karen. I'm a complete conservative. I've been a conservative all my entire life. I've been a construction business owner for the last 17 years. I've actually been working on different sections of the border wall over the last 17 years. I know where the high traffic areas are. I'm proposing that when I become the next Arizona governor, that I'm going to finish the wall, but I'm also going to build 3 strategic National Guard border barracks at the high traffic areas so that they can assist the Border Patrol in doing their job. Right now, the Border Patrol is spending 60% of their time doing paperwork. They're not actually guarding the border in the way that they need to. I was just out there recently, and I drove for miles across the border, and I saw one Border Patrol agent out there over about a 15, 20-mile drive. That's unacceptable, but the reason is because they're doing paperwork. They're processing illegal aliens that they're allowing to be brought into the country and bussed all across the country. It's a travesty and it needs to stop. That's probably number one. But number 2 is water. We have a water problem in the state of Arizona. And the Colorado River does supply us with about 12% of our water. It's a percentage, but it's not the largest percentage of our water. The largest percentage of our water comes from the Arizona watershed in the northern Arizona mountains. That's where the largest percentage comes. Back 150 years ago, we had roughly 11 ponderosa pine trees per acre. We now have 1,100 average per acre. It's far too many pine trees. We need to start logging. We need to turn the logs into money and profit. But we also need to take the trees out and remove them, at least half of them, because they're getting too close together. They're trying to live off the same water supply. They're drying out. They're getting bark beetles. They're dying. It's causing an environmental problem, not an environmental solution. If we log those trees, we can increase our water supplies by at least 10% just by doing that, because it's sucking a lot of the water away from our water supplies here in Arizona. Most people don't realize that. So that's another thing that I want to focus on when I become your next Arizona governor, because water is a big issue in the state of Arizona.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. I think when we have the question or the answers coming up here, let's hold our applause till the end. We want to get through this as fast as we can and have you learn all you can. Yes.
I'd like to give you guys 15 seconds with the yellow light before I go to red. I forgot to say that.
Thank you. I was wondering that. I was, honestly. So, getting on to the questions, we're going to start questioning here. Let's see, Scott, you're going to get the first question. You get to respond to this first. You both get the same question, by the way. What qualifications do you have that specifically equips you to serve Arizona in the state's highest office?
Well, I've owned my own businesses throughout my life several times, and this time for 17 years. I own 3 current businesses right now in Mesa, Arizona. One is a concrete pumping company. One is a concrete pumping equipment supply company where I sell equipment all across the United States. And I go and travel across the United States and train these people that have sold the equipment how to do their job and how to create a new business for themselves. Another thing is an online store that we have where we sell shotcrete equipment and tools nationwide to shotcrete contractors. So I'm very tech savvy, but I'm also very hands-on as a construction worker. And I can read a balance sheet and understand it very well. And I think those are good qualifications for a governor. I think the state should be run like a business, and I know I can do a good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Karen.
Thank you. Yes, I've spent the last 28 years in the private sector, as I mentioned earlier, on the other side of government, primarily local government, but some at the state level as well as the federal level, managing and winding our way through the bureaucracy of government, working on transportation issues, water issues, land issues, working on tax policy issues and economic development issues. So I will bring all of those years of experience to the table, but I've had multiple leadership roles. I've had my own business. I've signed the front of checks. I've led teams, big teams, to accomplish big projects throughout my nearly 3 decades of working in the private sector. I've also spent an awful lot of time in community activities, community service, school boards. 18 years ago, I was appointed to my kids' school board when we had one school. Today, that school system has 25 schools with thousands of kids on the waiting list. So I have a lot of perspective on K-12 education. I do have 4 kids. For 12 years, I was a single mom, so while I was working full-time. So I understand perseverance, I understand no excuses, you just get up and you get it done. I also have chaired many organizations, including the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, the Joe Foss Institute, where we led the Civics Education Initiative. We're in Arizona, we were the first state to pass the civics education legislation requiring every high school senior to take the same civics test that immigrants to the country take in order to become citizens. We then took that around the country. 33 states are now required, high school seniors are required to take that test. So I've led major efforts. I have substantive knowledge. I don't need on-the-job training. I'm ready to lead this state day one. And I will bring all of that experience and all of that perspective to the table to be your next governor. Thank you.
Didn't use all your time. Moving us right along. Thank you. Second question. During Governor Ducey's administration, we saw him use emergency power several times during COVID-19. 2 of those instances were to close churches and some businesses, declaring some essential and some not. Often it was the small businesses that got hurt. Learning from these mistakes, what would you do if another pandemic or other emergency threatened our state? How would you manage the use of emergency powers? Karen.
Well, I will start with the same prism that I will start or answer any question, and that is I believe in individual liberty. I believe that individuals make better decisions for themselves, their families, and their business than the government does. So that's my starting point. COVID did not come with instructions. We all learned a lot, and we all have the benefit of hindsight now. So would we have done things differently? Every single one of us would probably shake our head and say yes. You know, would we have locked things down? No. To me, small businesses in particular are the backbone of this country. And as the blue states in particular kept locking things down, you had to ask yourself, is this purposeful? Do they just want to kill small businesses? And my answer to that question was yes. They exceeded their authority in many of these states. Did all the red state governors get it absolutely correct? No. But again, we have the benefit of hindsight. But if I am faced with a pandemic or another crisis like that, I will start with the premise that individuals make better decisions than the government. That's the way I will govern. That's the question I will ask first. Because I go back to what I said earlier. Our rights come from God and not the government. And while an individual might make a mistake that's not good, on balance, in a self-governing society, we have to have faith in our people. We have to have faith that individuals on balance will make better decisions than the government will. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott.
We have a corporate oligarchy that runs our country now. And the reason, in my purview, that they shut things down in the way that they did was to hurt my small businesses. I'm not Amazon, but I have a little store online that does do business, and you have to be in that office to do business. And they wanted me to be shut down. But I have another business where I'm out doing construction, so luckily that particular business was an essential company. So my essential business kept my non-essential business going. So thank God I have multiple businesses. If I hadn't, I probably wouldn't have made it through the pandemic. I'd probably be homeless right now, and I probably wouldn't be on the stage with you guys. The fact that they shut everybody down in the way that they did, they padded their stocks, they made their money, made me sick. And that's one of the reasons I was thinking about running for governor. And watching the big businesses get bigger during a pandemic made me absolutely sick to my stomach. And it's those same big businesses that fund politics. There's too much money in politics, way too much money in politics. To the point where a guy like me, it's a little tougher for me to actually run for an office. It's a lot tougher for a guy like me to run for office. You know, luckily I'm a strong small businessman, or I wouldn't have been able to stack up and last this long in the race. And to be honest with you, I think from this point forward, I'm only going to rise in the polls and rise in this race. And I do agree with her. Individual liberties is number one. We're all individualists. We all want to run our lives a certain way. And we don't want the government telling us how to run our lives. We don't want an HOA telling us how to run our homes. We don't want a code compliance officer telling us what color to paint our house. We want freedom in the United States of America. I am angry, I am mad, I am pissed off, and that's the reason I'm running for Arizona governor. You guys need somebody to fight for you and stand up for you, the middle class, the class that I come from, the class that I reside in, and the class that I want to make stronger as your next Arizona governor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, Scott, you're going to be first. Governor Ducey has chosen not to meet with the Arizona legislative leaders, constituents, and informative lobbyists and experts on a variety of issues. The public has become concerned, and they want you to make wise decisions from knowledgeable, experienced staff and advisors. As governor, how will you choose your advisors and staff? How will you repair the lines of communication between the governor's office and the legislature?
I will meet with every legislator individually from the House and the Senate. Individually. I don't care if they're a Democrat, I don't care if they're a Republican. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to take notes, I'm going to see what everybody proposes, where everybody's coming from, and I'm going to find the things that we can meet in the middle on and start there. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to hire a team of people to filter out the lobbyists and take the good information from them in, filter out the bad information, and do what's best for the people. Because I work for the people, just like I work for my customers. As a small businessman, I've had many employees tell me, Scott, we work some really, really crazy hours. We work at all different hours of the night and morning and day, and it's crazy. Why don't you tell your customers, we're going to work these hours? And I go, guys, because I know you work for me, and I know you think I can set the hours, but I don't. My customers set the hours. I work for my customers. And when I'm your next Arizona governor, I'm going to work for you.
Thank you. Karen?
Thank you. So my father was in the legislature and was Senate president, just like Senator Pierce was. And I learned from him at a very young age. He was elected 50 years ago. I learned from him the importance of talking to everybody, every stakeholder. He was elected the same year a gentleman named Art Hamilton was elected. Art was a traditional liberal Democrat. My father was a traditional conservative Republican. They never agreed on anything. And to this day, they're still best of friends. That's the way it should be. This is America. This is a self-governing society where we don't always agree on everything. And our ability to talk and communicate, that's how we learn. That's how we solve complex problems. And so I will commit to working with every legislator as well. I'm not going to check my principles, my conservative values and conservative principles at the door, but we all deserve respect. We are on a path right now in America, this cancel culture, calling people names. Think about the end game. It's not a pretty one. We have got to get back to civility and civil discourse where we can work together to solve complex problems. And that's what I will commit to do. I have been a passionate advocate of the First Amendment for this very, very reason. And I will continue to bring that passion to bear when I'm governor. As far as the staff goes, it's critically important to surround yourself with people who share your vision. People, and it's critically important for a governor to be able to articulate that vision. And I will be working with industry, in particular our legacy industries, the logging industry, the ag industry, ranching, our mining industry, our tourism industry, and go to those industries and ask them to send me their very best. because personnel is policy, and who you surround yourself with will determine whether or not you are successful as the next governor of Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very important thing for the governor to be communicating with the legislature. If he were down there helping Karen more, it would certainly help things get finished sooner. Governor Symington would walk through the halls frequently, and Governor Brewer would come down there. So thank you for those answers. Karen, what can we do as a state to gain control over the Mexican border issues? What would be your plan?
I have a 6-point plan on my website. The very first thing I would do is call our legislature into an emergency session, because this is an emergency. When I decided to run for governor, I said, I've got to go down there and learn for myself. And I've been down there many, many times. I'm heading back down there in about 7 days. And every time I go down there, I learn something new. And in fact, it's worse than you think it is. It's the national security issues. It's the human smuggling, the sex trafficking, the drug trafficking, that not only are we going to live with today, but we're going to be living with this for generations if we don't get a handle on this. And it's not just an Arizona problem. This is now a 50-state problem. We just happen to be on the front lines. And so it's costing Arizonans a disproportionate amount economically, but the human toll is part of the story that we haven't talked about. So we will call the emergency session of our legislators to find the resources necessary to send to our local law enforcement, our border sheriffs along the border, to enforce the law. We will also build the wall where we can. We have state land, private land, public land, and tribal land. We can build the wall on state land. And believe me, based on the private property owners that I've talked to, they want us to build the wall on their land. Many of the ranchers on the southern border have had to leave their land. Their ranch hands have had to leave because it's just too dangerous. We will use surveillance technology everywhere we can, from fiber optics to drones to cameras, whatever we need, because when you have a wall, it works. Where you don't have a wall, that's where they come through. And by having as much wall as we can then utilize our finite resources in law enforcement, and they can focus their efforts where we can't build a wall on federal land because of this crazy open border policy of the Biden administration. I've come to the conclusion that the Biden administration's policy is working just the way they want it to. And we're suffering the consequences of it. I've also made it very clear that any city in this state that wants to declare themselves a sanctuary city, which they shouldn't be doing, but if they do, we will utilize every power in our authority to defund that city. And finally, we will enter into a multi-state compact with other governors. It will likely be the red state governors, because the blue state governors don't think we have a problem. In fact, Gavin Newsom wants to give them all free health care. So my suggestion is we might start busing them all to California and give them free health care over there. And the gas is a lot, because gas is so expensive, it's going to be cheaper to bus them to California than it is to Washington, D.C. But this is going to be a whole of government effort in Arizona. We need to let the cartels know that if you want to come across, go to California. You're not coming to Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Until the federal government adjudicates them or removes them, we're going to hold the illegal aliens in 10 cities next to my National Guard border barracks in Arizona. We're not letting the illegals go. We're not busing them to California. We're not busing them to D.C. We're not busing them anywhere. We're going to hold them in jail indefinitely. We're going to detain them indefinitely until the federal government does something with them. Okay? We are going to finish the border wall. There's a lot of sections that need to be finished. We are going to install technology in the ground. We're going to install seismic technology into the ground. We're going to know when they're tunneling under the wall that we built. We're going to know. And then we're going to poke a hole in that tunnel from the top and fill it full of concrete, not blow it up with bombs. We do have a major issue in this country. I work in construction. I've met more illegal aliens in my lifetime than you folks have ever met in your lifetime, unless you hired them to work on your house, which some of you may have. You didn't know they were illegal maybe, but you hired a company and they hired them. So I worked side by side with illegal aliens for decades. They don't like working with American people. They're not friendly towards us, I can tell you that. So you can't really be friendly back sometimes. I have the respect of the illegal aliens, I know that. As your next governor, I will be feared by the illegal aliens, I can tell you that. And any business owner that hires an illegal alien, we will be starting to enforce SB 1070, which means we can shut your business down if you hire illegal aliens. We can make it extremely unfriendly for your business if you hire illegal aliens. And we need to work with the legislature to pass new legislation so that illegal aliens cannot get contractors' licenses in this state. That's a big one. I have to compete with illegal aliens all the time. This is wrong. They don't have insurance. They don't have workman's comp. They don't pay their people health care. Illegals own a company. They hire other illegals. Nobody does anything about it. I'm tired of competing with them. And if any of you in the crowd are in construction, I know you are too, and something needs to be done at the state level, and we can protect our state. We have states' rights. We have states' rights in the state. We can use the U.S. Constitution and the 10th Amendment to protect the state of Arizona. We have that right in this state to do that. And Russell Pierce got SB 1070 passed just to reinforce that. And then, no offense, but Jan Brewer didn't enforce that law, and neither did Doug Ducey for the last 8 years. Doug Ducey caused me to have to go into more government infrastructure work and away from residential, which is, in the long run, turned out to be good for my company. But in the short run, a lot of people that I used to compete with that were American-owned businesses have gone under because the illegals put them under. It's wrong, and it's another thing that really ticks me off, and I'm tired of it. And I think something needs to be done, and I'll do something about it.
Thank you. Scott, next question. The Arizona Department of Education now takes up 56% of the entire state of Arizona budget. Governor Ducey pushed for a tax increase for a teacher pay increase, but now teachers are asking for still more. How will you create a more efficient, less expensive, top-heavy system focused on K-12 students' ability to read, calculate, think, and learn?
So, Doug Ducey's tax increase only increased teacher pay by 2%. There's teachers that didn't deserve an increase at all, because there's a lot of teachers that are just no good. I'm sorry. There's teachers that are good. They do deserve merit-based pay increases. That's true. We shouldn't have raised taxes. We keep throwing money at the problem. I don't know if anybody in this crowd realizes it, but my son just graduated from Mesa High last week, and I had to go in there and talk to the principal about a particular issue before they graduated, and I found out there was 5 vice principals at Mesa High. Do you guys know there could be 5 vice principals at one high school? Are you guys aware of that? Because when I graduated from high school in the year 2000, there was 1 vice principal. My school had 5,000 kids. There was 1 vice principal with a school with 5,000 kids. Mesa High's excuse is, well, we have 3,500 kids. We're a big school. We need 5 vice principals. No, you're patting the pockets of your buddies. You're patting the pockets of your buddies. Just like City of Mesa did when Obama became our president. Code compliance started coming around my house saying I couldn't have signs on my work trucks and park them in front of my house. I said, I didn't know I lived in an HOA. The problem was they went from having 8 code compliance officers to now having 40. 40 code compliance officers, each paid $80,000 a year. It's the good old boy system. Everything's top heavy, from the city to the state to the county to the schools to the school districts. We could shrink administration just by combining school districts. We can get rid of 4 vice principals at Mesa High and only have 1. They each make $100,000 a year. We get rid of those 4 vice principals, we got 8 brand new teachers. Now we don't have crowded classrooms. It's all common sense, and how come sense isn't common? I'd like to know that. And that's something I'll be investigating when I'm governor. I'll be investigating the fact that the money is not going to the teachers and the students. It's going to the administrators. And enough is enough. Do I have more time? Oh, good. Keep going. So, I visited Cass in downtown Phoenix recently, and there was a homeless shelter there, and I hung out with a bunch of homeless people. We had a nice talk, and it turns out that the homeless shelter is the same way. They're top-heavy. They get federal funds, they get state funds. They don't really help the homeless. Most of the money goes to the administrators and their $300,000 a year salaries and their Hawaii vacations and their meetings and their bull crap. And I'm tired of it, and I think you're all tired of it too. And I think you all know why I haven't been on the news. This is probably why. Because a little bit they have heard me talk about, they haven't agreed with it. Because I'm going to be cutting their buddies' paychecks to increase the teachers' pay. Because that's where the money actually should go. and to the homeless that need to eat.
Thank you. Karen?
Thank you. I am a huge advocate and have been for 30 years of school choice. I believe every parent should be able to have the opportunity to pick the best educational pathway for the child. And the bureaucracy and the teachers union have had a hold on our kids for far too long. As I mentioned earlier, I have 4 kids. They've all been through different pathways, educational pathways. And every child, regardless of zip code, should have those same opportunities. We have 220 school districts in Arizona. And as Scott said, it is so top-heavy. All the money going into the bureaucracy, and it's not making its way into the classrooms. So I have already a huge target on my back by the teachers unions, because I believe the money needs to follow the kid into the classroom. That way we will have complete competition in our schools, and when you have complete competition, quality goes up and cost goes down. And money is not always the answer to education, and yet that is what the teachers unions, that's their knee-jerk reaction to every problem and every question. We need more money. So if money was the answer to the question, Detroit would have the best educational outcomes. They spend $26,000 per kid, and they have a reading proficiency of 6%. Then you look at Utah, where they spend the least amount, or they were among the least amount per student, and yet they have the highest outcomes in their school system. We now have more than 20% of our kids going to charter schools in Arizona. More kids enrolled in charter schools here than any other state in the nation. And even better, we have more than 50% of our kids going to a school other than the one they're assigned. That tells me that parents care. Parents want to make a choice, and we're going to give them that choice. You know, with all the money we've been putting into education, in fact, Governor Ducey has put more money into education, and yet the Auditor General just came out with a report, and the 20% increase by 2020 didn't happen across the board. Many teachers didn't see that increase. And if we pay our good teachers, not all teachers, but if we pay our good teachers like we want to keep them, we won't have a teacher shortage. In fact, I was talking to the chair of the Kyrene Elementary School District recently, and he told me that for every school teacher opening they have 50 applicants because they pay their teachers. They pay their teachers well, and they have great outcomes because they give the principals an awful lot of leeway. And study after study will tell you, if you empower the principal, they have the most impact on the outcomes in that classroom. And so, again, you've got to take a lot of the bureaucracy out of education, empower parents, give parents choice, and let the money follow the kids into the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll throw in a question of my own, but I won't. I'll save it for Ken. Since we are a landlocked state, we must get water from groundwater aquifers and a percentage of the greatly reduced flows of the Colorado River through the Salt River Project. We also get water from the Salt River Project. So, and that's all of the, let's see, that would be the Kaibab and Kaibab National Forest. With the extraordinary growth that the state is experiencing, how do you propose to get and manage water needs in Arizona's future?
My water plan, which you can find on my website, caringforarizona.com, talks about a couple particular important issues. One is augmentation. We have to increase our supplies. And through technology, we have things we can do today that weren't economically feasible just 10 years ago, such as desalination. We need to do that. There are other techniques, cloud seeding, other things that we should be doing, like eradicating the salt cedars along our major rivers because they are sucking up our water. We also have to continue to make improvements in conservation and efficiencies. All that being said, I want to give a nod to the people that came before us 100 years ago, in particular Salt River Project, who pledged their land as collateral to build the Salt River Project, without which a lot of growth in Arizona never would have happened. Also, our members of our delegation spent 20 years bringing us the Central Arizona Project. And then more recently, in the 1980s, our legislature enacted the Groundwater Management Act. And in all of those cases, those leaders weren't just looking at tomorrow or the next day. They were looking at 50 and 100 years out. So today, it's incumbent on us and leadership in the state of Arizona to be thinking the same way, thinking 50 and 100 years out. What do we need to do? And now we're confronted with this enduring drought, 22-year drought with no end in sight. Nobody could have predicted that the drought would last this long, and continuing growth pressures throughout the state, not just in the urban areas. As I travel around the state, in greater Arizona, in small towns, big towns, the growth pressures are real. And so the water issues are real. We must deal with them. We must be able to convene all of the stakeholders and all of the water experts, which, quite frankly, are already meeting and doing a lot of good work. But we can't take our eye off the ball, and we can't look for short-term fixes when it comes to water. We need to be looking, as the stewards of water that came before us, we need to be doing the same, because our kids, our grandkids, and the next generations deserve no less. And so I'm the only candidate in the race that has any natural resource experience. As a land use expert, I've been around it a long time. I know what questions to ask. I know enough to be dangerous. I will tell you, I'm not an expert. And any other candidate that tells you they're an expert, they're not. You can't take a class in water. You can't. It's a lifetime. It's a career of understanding it, because the complexity of water in Arizona is such that we need to rely on experts. And I believe we will rise to the challenge, and we will set Arizona up for the next 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
So we're growing at a record pace right now. I don't think we've ever grown at the pace we're growing today currently. A lot of it has to do with our blue state Democrats pushing people out of their states and towards ours. So though I welcome the economic growth for my business and for our state, and the tax revenue it creates, that's an amazing thing. But we don't have the waters to sustain the growth that we're currently growing and the record pace that we're growing at. We can't sustain it, sadly. But there are solutions. Like she said, desalinization, and I've heard Doug Ducey say he would like to desalinize water in Mexico, which, by the way, I don't want to put my water energy security in the hands of corrupt Mexican officials and drug cartels in Mexico, nor do I want my water poisoned as it's heading this way. Nor do I want my water stolen out of the pipeline before it gets here. I think that's just a bad idea. But what we can do is we can pipe the water out of the Sea of Cortez, bring it to Yuma, where we currently have a desalinization plant now. It's for low salinity desalinization for stuff in the Colorado River towards the end of the run before it goes into Mexico. There's some salty Colorado River water there, so that was built for that back in '92. We can expand upon that, make it 10 times bigger. We can use the Israeli technology of desalinization. So we can have a desalinization plant right here in Arizona, in Yuma, Arizona, providing jobs in Arizona, so that we can keep an eye on our water resources that we're bringing into the state from another country, and so that we can essentially have control over the water. We can bring dirty water through the piping here. Nobody's going to steal dirty salt water as it's on its way here, and if they poison it, great, that's fine. We're going to desalinize it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It's going to be clean when we get done with it. We can also turn the salt into salt licks that we're going to be taking out of the water. We can give that away to other states and for their national forests or whatever, or we can sell it to, pool suppliers for, salt chlorinated pools or whatever. We can profit from the salt that we get from that desalinization plant in Arizona. We can also build other desalinization plants at Hartwell Hollow, which is out there by Tonopah, Arizona. Most people don't realize this, but there's the equivalent of 3 Lake Powells underground, under the west side of Phoenix, right now. It's deep water, it's Jurassic water, it's low salinity water, but it's still salty. And we can drill down deep, suck that supply up, clean it up, and we can use that right there in Phoenix. I mean, that's a ton of water right there. They say there's 300 to 500 year supply of water just right there under Phoenix. If we play our cards right, we have plenty of water. We just have to be smart about how we get it and how we bring it to the people. And we have to do it in a way that it's affordable.
Thank you, Scott. Now, if we have time, we have a few questions from the crowd. Pardon me? Oh, geez, if only I could read. These are going to be yes or no questions. We've heard that before. A yes or no, usually it takes a little little longer than yes or no, but we're going to try to do it with a yes or no. Who was first? Karen Scott. Do you support the Trump policies?
I absolutely support the Trump policies, and I support his personality. He's got the best personality of any president we've ever had in the history of America. I love him. He's great. Good. Is that a good answer? Because that's the truth. That's how I
great.
feel about it.
That's perfect.
I think his candidate for governor is terrible, Karen Lake, but that's just, it is what it is.
Karen, your turn.
I absolutely support President Trump's policies. We supported him when he ran in 2016. We supported him in 2020, raised a lot of money for him. I even had my daughter who's here with me worked for him at the White House. She was there until January 20th. I think may have been the last one turning off the lights. But it's a matter of his record, what he accomplished in 3 years, not 4, the last year was stolen from him. In 3 years, with both hands tied behind his back, with incoming missiles from the swamp, from the left, from the media, from big tech, and our foreign adversaries.
That's a yes or no?
I'm getting to yes. I'm getting to yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. From USMCA to NAFTA, or to NATO, I can go. I'll shut up.
Thank you. That's great. Okay, yes or no, part of being a Republican is standing for lower taxes and smaller government. This is not a yes or no, whoever wrote it. What will you do to lower taxes and shrink the state government? Karen.
This isn't yes or no. We will continue to make Arizona one of the
How about a minute?
Okay, 1 minute. We are a low tax, low regulatory state, and when I'm governor, we will keep it that way. Because that's the way you generate economic activity, is you let individuals and businesses thrive without interference from the government. I believe government at all levels has grown beyond what it should. And so we will look for ways across the board to shrink government. And most importantly, to shrink regulations and the number of regulations that impact us. I'm going to go back to Trump's policies. Because he took back, or he rescinded 8 regulations for every 1 new regulation. And that is what we need to do at the state level as well. And when I'm governor, that will be a focus and a goal of ours. We have to shrink government wherever we can.
Thank you. Scott?
I'm going to encourage shrinking government at the state, city, county level, every level. Code compliance level. Don't be telling me how to run my household. Don't be telling me how to run my family. Don't be telling me I can't have signs on my truck, or you're going to fine me $500, and then if I don't pay it, you're going to leave my house and take my house away from me and sell it on the free market. That's communism. So I'm done with that. We need to roll back every regulation humanly possible in the state of Arizona. And that tax that Doug gave us for the teachers, that he taxed us so we could increase teachers' pay, but in reality we really didn't do that. We increased the amount of vice principals and administrators instead. I'm going to take that tax away. I'm going to lobby to take that tax away. We're going to shrink the amount of money that goes to the schools. There's too much money going to the schools. If we spend it better and we spend it wisely, we don't need to put so much money towards it. We have forests to manage. Let's put some money towards that. Let's save our environment. Let's save our forests before they all burn down and we lose our water sources from up north. That's more important to me.
Thank you. All right, finally, if you had been governor in November, would you have signed the electors confirming Biden while a fraud hearing was going on?
I absolutely wouldn't have signed it. Absolutely not.
Thank you.
I wasn't there and didn't have all the information that the governor had. And so as a lawyer, I cannot sit here and tell you what I would or would not have done if I didn't have all of the evidence in front of me, and I was not privy to all the evidence.
Thank you. All right.
I'm not a lawyer, so I wouldn't have done it.
You're both allowed. We've gone over, there's been so much comedy in here. We're going to give you 1 minute instead of 3. No, I'm kidding. You both can have your closing statements. And I guess, Karen, it's your turn to start. And it's 3 minutes. Oh, well.
2 minutes, okay. Well, thank you all again for being here and being willing to listen and caring about this state and this country. We are facing a battle that none of us asked for, but this battle is upon us. This is not a job that I sought. This is not a job I wanted, but it's a job I'm willing to do. Ronald Reagan told us, freedom is one generation away from extinction. And I'm afraid, folks, that it's maybe a year or two away. And there is no chance that I'm going to sit back and be a spectator. Ronald Reagan also told us that he didn't want to spend his sunset years telling his kids what freedom was like. I'm not going to do that either. I have been immensely blessed my entire life to live the American dream, to work hard from the time I was a very young girl, to put myself through school, to build my business, to build projects all over the state of Arizona that I'm extremely proud of. And most importantly, and the hat that I have been most proud to wear, is as a mother and now a grandmother. And it's my kids that have encouraged me to do this. As I said, I was a single mom for 12 years. My kids know me better than anybody. They know what I've been able to accomplish. They know the struggles that we've had. And when your kids ask you, in fact, my son called me and said, Mom, you need to run for governor. And after I said, wrong number, I said, why? And he said, Mom, because you don't need it. And this isn't about you. This is about the future. And when I look at all the people that came before us, that have given life and limb, the young men and women in our military who put that uniform on every single day, this is for them. It's for those that came before us, and it's for the next generation. So I humbly ask you for your support and for your vote in August. We must nominate the candidate that has the best chance of winning in November, and I believe I'm that candidate. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Carrie Lake can't run for me forever. Eventually she's going to have to debate me. And when she does, it's on. It's going to be a fun time. Anyway, I'm running for governor because I've been working on infrastructure projects around Arizona for the past decade, roughly. Been in business 17 years, but about the last decade I've been working on infrastructure projects. APS, SRP, the nuclear power plant. I've worked for Fan Contracting. You know, Karen Fan. I've worked for that company. She has a wonderful company, by the way. They've treated me very good over the years. But what I've noticed over the last 20 years, since I've lived in the state of Arizona, is we went from having the best roads and bridges in this country to now having potholes all across the state. I just drove to do a job the other day when I stopped by her to see her in Wickenburg, you know, have a nice chat with her for a little bit. I did a job in Laughlin, and on my way back, I'm noticing how bumpy these roads are. They're just going to crap. There's this half-cent tax that we're charging the people throughout the state. Where's that half-cent tax going? Where's the 18-cent gas tax going? I feel like the state's turning into California. Where's that money going? Is that money going to administration too? Because it's not going to the roads and the bridges. When I'm your next Arizona governor, and when I'm your infrastructure governor, I'm going to make sure we take care of the roads and the bridges. Maybe we can cut some of the teacher stuff back and put it towards the roads and bridges. Maybe that's what we need to do. And also, people were wondering, how am I going to fund the National Guard Border Barracks, Arizona National Guard Border Barracks? Easily. There's $5 billion earmarked coming from the Biden administration in the infrastructure deal, and I'm going to take some of that $5 billion and appropriate it towards the Arizona National Guard Border Barracks and the tent cities that we're going to build next to them to house the illegals that we're not going to allow to leave our border until they have been adjudicated and dealt with and or deported. Period. Enough is enough. Things need to change. I'm the man for such a time as now. We need tough men, built of grit, built of concrete, built of stone. That's me. I'm a concrete guy, by the way. So, and a shotgun nozzleman. So, heavy hose. Heavier than a fireman's hose, by the way. Firemen think they're tough. I'm a whole lot tougher than a fireman. I can nozzle shotgun. Gunite. Gunite. The older guys know it as gunite, but it's shotgun. We've changed the terminology on it now.
Thank you.
And that yellow light just doesn't stop. Thank you. Vote for me in the August 2nd Republican primary. My name is Scott Neely, and it's neelyforgovernor.com.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's give these two a round of applause. Thank our candidates, and let's have two members to come on up. And Governor all the issues that we will raise with our legislative candidates and all the candidates. We encourage you to stay after until Beverly has a 50-50 drawing and adjourns the meeting to talk with your constituents one-on-one. Legislative candidates: Ken Bennett, who is running for the Arizona Senate; Selena Bliss, running for the Arizona House of Representatives. Again, we have the same rules will apply for the candidates and the audience. And starting with a 2-minute opening comments, we'll hear from Selena Bliss first, and then Ken. Selena, your turn.
All right. Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you to the Yavapai County Republican Women, and for those of you taking your precious time to vet the candidates. Before I get started, I want to call out Representative Quang Nguyen in the audience. He's already doing that. I can tell them, Quang, you're raising the bar every day you're down there. You're just making it more and more that the next person has to rise to. So thank you for your good work. The reason I call out Representative Nguyen is you're going to pick the team. You're going to pick 2 people in the House, 1 for the Senate. And the terms are short. Every other year, we're up here campaigning and you're voting. So there's a lot of work to be done in a short period of time. When you look at your candidates, you really need to look at why are they running, who are they to be running, and what are their issues. For me, my why is out of a desire to have Arizona and this district reach its full potential. I care very much about this district. I've been here since 1971. I was raised here, raised my family here, and I just retired here. So I hope to share more of my personal story. When I talk about the issues, actions speak louder than words. So when you look at my palm card, I've got 6 issues. Please ask me, what am I doing about each and every one of those? I'm not like some candidates that just talk about them. So the other why is I believe Arizona is the greatest state in this nation, and this is the greatest nation in the world, and I want to keep it that way. So out of a desire for duty, that's why I've stepped up to serve. I cannot stand idly by. So that's the why. The who am I? Well, when you ask folks, I'm an advocate. I've been a nurse for 38 years. The last 26, while I continued to work every other weekend at the hospital, I taught nursing at the college. So I advocated for students to enter into healthcare careers. I'm engaged in the community, politically and civically. The yellow light's on, so I'll speed it up. I'm also dedicated to Republican and conservative values and principles. So I'm looking forward to sharing more. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken Bennett.
Thank you, Selena. I'm Ken Bennett. I'm running for the state senate. If you were here about 20 years ago, you remember those signs. And since we're calling people out, I'm going to call out my mother, Donna Bennett Wendorf now. Her new husband, Charles.
Hey, Donna.
Dad passed away about 4.5 years ago, and the Republican Women of Prescott sat both of them at the same table in November of last year. And so be careful who you sit next to, because Charles had lost his wife a couple of years ago, and they took a liking to each other, and 5 months later they were married. And so, and that's who I am. I was raised by my parents. Mom's parents, my grandparents' phone number here in Prescott was 49. That's how long we've been in the Prescott area. And when Grandma passed away, that's the number I now have on my cell phone, 928-445-2949. But it started out their original 49 number at the Beulah Jakes, Steve and the Beulah Jakes. I'm a husband and a father and a grandfather. My wife and I have 3 grown children. They are my heroes. One son is a high school teacher and principal. Our daughter is a labor and delivery nurse, brings babies into the world every day. And our other son goes undercover internationally and rescues women and girls from sex trafficking. So, I don't have to look very far to find heroes in my life. They're my children. I'm running because I'm concerned about Arizona. I served in the legislature 20 years ago. And as we get into the questions, there's just a few seconds left, but I want to secure our elections. I want to secure the state's finances. And I want to secure our borders because the federal government's not doing their job. And I'll stop there and we'll go to the questions.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, Selena, starting with you, what qualifications do you have that uniquely qualifies you to represent our state and local issues?
Well, what I first mentioned is I have the most longevity of all of the candidates. So when I moved here in 1971, I was 8 years old, and I say that because I was old enough to have very vivid memories. Believe it or not, Prescott Valley was 5 buildings, and one was a bar, the Jackass Bar, so I couldn't even go in there. So I've seen how our communities have evolved. I understand our history. You don't know where you're going until you know where you've been. So I have that respect and understanding of our citizens and the leadership and where we've been through the time. I also bring my leadership experience, and that's that ability to work with teams. If you go to my website, it's selenabliss.com, and you're going to see it's different than other candidate websites. I didn't hire a campaign strategist to create a template, fill it with a bunch of text, and then put my name on it. I didn't do that. What I did is created everything for transparency. So when you go to selenabliss.com, you'll see my bio. You'll see all the information of how I've given back to my community civically and politically. Politically, I'm active in the Yavapai County Republican Party as a precinct committeeman, as well as a state committeeman. In the political clubs, I'm a member of most of the clubs of Yavapai County, the Men's Forum, the Granite Mountain Club, the Prescott Valley Club, this Yavapai County Club, the Republican Women of Prescott. So as a precinct committeeman, I go out and empower others to speak for conservative causes. As a constitutional conservative, I want others to bring that voice to the Capitol. So I speak on the Request to Speak program. So to the point of the question, I'm about empowering others to step up as well and to work as teams. You'll see some of the work I did while I was at the college. My last 3 years, I worked with teams, and this was like herding cats, if you will. I led the Pathways Project, where we streamlined the curriculum to fast-track students to take only the classes they need, get out on time, and improve retention. I'm the immediate past president of my professional organization, that's the Arizona Nurses Association. And we worked with the physicians and the Arizona Hospital Association to beat back the California Union. But folks, they're coming back. So again, to the point of the question, I have the leadership experience, I have the ability to work in teams, and I have a track record of getting things done. If you look at motives, look at why candidates are running. Ask them, what really inspires you? What gets you up in the morning? For me, it's serving others and leaving the office in a better place than I found it. It's not about wanting to just get that power and recognition that I see in other candidates. I hope to share more about my story of my growing up with my grandfather who served in the South Dakota State House and watching him as my model as servants, as public servants. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken.
Well, one of the things that I think you can do to know what somebody's going to do in the future is look at what they've done in the past. And I've served in this position that I, again, seek. And so I think I proved that I can serve the constituents of LD1 in the state Senate. I served for 8 years. The last 4 years, I was even elected by the other senators as the Senate president. But one of the most important things of anyone who wants to serve in state government is to understand local government. State government is much more important than federal government. And local government is actually more important than state government. The closer we can make government work for the people, the better. My first experience in serving people in an elected position was when I was 25 years old on the Prescott City Council. Now, I think I got elected on the reputations of my parents and grandparents, and there was one letter to the Prescott Courier from Steve's parents who said they knew my parents and grandparents, and I came from good stock, and they are cattle ranchers. So I had one endorsement letter in the Prescott Courier from the Pierces, But I learned on the city council for those 4 years that state government should make local government easier, not harder. Every level of government seems to take the opinion that, oh, the ones above us are oppressive and always telling us what to do, but the ones below us are incompetent and need our direction, so we're going to tell them what to do. Well, that's what we have to avoid at state government. We have to respect local city councils, boards of supervisors, county treasurers, people that do the work closest to the people, community college board members. I see Deb McCaslin here. The state legislature has to respect local government, and I think one of the best things that prepared me for serving in state government was starting on a city council here in Prescott too many more years ago than I'd like to admit.
Thank you. Next, we have named 2 issues that you see right now that you would carry legislation to solve. Please cite a brief example of each solution you have in mind, starting with you, Ken.
2 issues that I would focus on would be elections and our state retirement system. When I served in the legislature 20 years ago, the state retirement systems were more than 100% funded, meaning we had more money in the fund that was needed to pay the liabilities or the future payments that would be paid out of the fund. Today, they are about 50% underfunded. That's almost $22 billion. Now you're hearing about a surplus at the state capitol right now, which is probably contributing to why they can't get the budget done, because it's always harder to put a budget together when you have lots of money than it is when you don't have any money. During my 4 years as Senate President, the first 2 years were right after 9/11, and the economy had kind of tanked, and we actually had to cut the budget the first year, and then we had to just maintain the same budget the next year. At the end of that second year, when everybody had got the same amount they got last year, the money started to come in, the economy started finally come around, and it was announced that we had $10 million available of discretionary spending that year. Within a week, we had hundreds of bills that wanted to spend $1.8 billion when the other 89 legislators heard that there was $10 million available. So if we have a surplus at the state level, we should use it to pay down the unfunded balances in the state retirement system. The other thing I would work on is elections. We must have confidence in our elections. I have sponsored legislation that's going through the legislature right now. It's House Bill 2780. And it requires the counties to do 4 things. Publish 4 pieces of data to audit our elections, to make our elections transparent, trackable, and publicly verified. 10 days before an election, the county would produce a list, publish a list of who's eligible and registered to vote in the election, by name, address, and precinct. Now that's already public information because that's where the candidates get their list to mail things to people. But if you publish it by name and address, you can look at an address and say, you know, I know Lucy, she lives at 123 Maple Street with Rex, and lo and behold, there's just 2 people there. But if I look at 123 Maple Street and there's 13 people registered there, then maybe we have a problem, we need to watch that. After the election, 3 pieces of data would be published by the county. The first would be a list of who voted. Of course, everyone on the who voted list should be on the was eligible to vote list. Second, the ballot images, and there should be 1 ballot image, no more, no less, for each person that voted. And the third thing would be the cast vote record, and the red light's on, so I will answer this in the next one. Or give me a rebuttal. Would you do that? Give me a rebuttal.
All right, well, like I said earlier, the terms are short, so we have to hit the ground running. When you look at my palm card, I've got the 6 issues that need to be addressed ASAP, because frankly, we the people are pissed. We need some work done. When you ask me which is more important than the others, it's like saying which of my 6 kids is my favorite. I can't tell you. They're all very important. But I have to say election integrity comes number 1. There's a lot of work to do. We need to bring back confidence in our elections. I'm very concerned about the turnout. from the lack of perceived confidence that I'm seeing, and we should make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. So many of the important issues are being addressed. To Michelle Ugenta-Rita's credit, she sponsored quite a few pieces of legislation last year. They got rid of the permanent early voting list. So now it's the active voting list. You'll only get a ballot in the mail if you're actively voting, and you'll get notified if you're not. I like what Senator J.D. Mesnard suggested. I really hope this bill passes, and that's on-site tabulation during that 26-day pre-voting period where you can go in to the election office, either in Cottonwood or here on Fair Street in Prescott. You can go in and cast your vote early, but it's just like turning it in the ballot box because they're going by signature verification. What Senator Mesnard suggested is a bill that would actually tabulate your vote during that early voting period so that one vote, one person, so if you have ballot harvesting and illegal ballots, you're already going to see that vote cast. So I hope that passes, and I would definitely support it. So what would I do personally? Well, I would verify audits for the electronic adjudication. When the audit started, it was basically, from my perception in my living room, watching the work you were doing, it looked like a recount. There wasn't an investigation. I would like to see investigations on the findings that you shared with the Senate, but nobody mentioned the electronic adjudication of the ballots. And I keep harping about this in that when you when Adrian Fontes, the Secretary of State at the time, was doing illegal activity, one thing he did was he got rid of the two individuals that adjudicate a ballot. So if you're not sure how did that person vote, was it Trump or Biden, you have a Democrat and a Republican sitting there and they decide amongst themselves. And if they can't, you bring in a third person. Well, Mr. Fontes thought it'd be a good idea to hurry things up and purchase a computer for it. But what he didn't do, and we found out later, was it was uncertain that it was actually programmed. It was out of the box. I'm sorry, folks, B comes before T. So we don't know. That involved 10,000 votes. That could have made the difference. So I would like to see legislation that shows the verification of electronic adjudication. And then, 15 seconds left. Border security. Art Del Suerto, I'm laser focused on what the state can do. He's part of the Border Patrol Council. He gave me some very good ideas. Selena, this is what you can do at the state. And I guess I'll have to, well, let's have a rebuttal. Yeah.
Okay, 1 minute rebuttal.
Since Selena mentioned the audit, Karen Fann asked me to be the liaison for the Senate to the audit. I was not responsible for the audit. I wasn't the director. I wasn't in any supervisory role overseeing what happened. I didn't select the auditor. There are some things that should have happened in the audit that would have made it much better. Selena's referred to a couple. They should have referred to and focused in on what's called the cast vote record. When an election management system reads a ballot, the votes off that ballot are recorded in a big spreadsheet. And it's got rows and columns. And each row of the spreadsheet is a ballot. And the columns on that spreadsheet are the choices that the voter had in the ballot. Biden might have been in column D, Trump in E, and Jorgensen in F. If they'd have looked at the cast, what they really did, and you were right, is they hand counted 2.1 million ballots under the idea that maybe the machines had not operated correctly. But what we found is we hand counted 2.1 million ballots, and we came up within 350 votes of what the machine said the result was. If they looked at the cast vote record, they could have come up with a lot more information that would have put the voters' minds to ease about whether the election was done correctly or not.
Thank you for the rebuttal. Okay, Selena, with the Department of Education taking the largest chunk of the state budget at 56%, what ideas do you have to create a more efficient, less expensive, top-heavy system to instead focus on K-12 students' ability to read, calculate, think, learn?
Yeah, so we have a problem. If you look at the budget, the piece of the pie, 54 to 56% goes to public education. Just an FYI, the rest, the top heavy pieces are the Department of Corrections as well as healthcare. We definitely need to focus on a state on the piece of pie that's funding education, because right now, at what, 14,000 per pupil, we can trim that down. I have several ideas on this, and one is to promote school choice. School choice will promote that creativity and that competition for running, if you will, like a business, those efficiencies. When you do hiring decisions, you only get so much money, so you want outcomes. Part of being an educator is I can read curriculum, I understand goals and outcomes, and how those are measured, so I can see through and cut through some of the waste. Earlier it was mentioned with our statewide candidates that the administration is top-heavy. Well, if you limit the amount of money per pupil and you're competing with public, private, and charter, you're going to see some of those efficiencies naturally occur. I believe in expanding the scholarship accounts, the ESAs, the Empowerment Scholarship Accounts, so that the money follows the child, if you will. We should not be forcing the child to fit the school. It's to have the school accommodate the child. Oh my gosh, it's red.
Thank you. Ken, you have 1 minute.
1 minute?
I'm kidding.
3 ideas for making our school funding more efficient. 1 is school choice. I support school choice completely. Let the money follow the parents' choice of where they decided to put their child into an education. But there's 2 other ideas. One would be called priority-based budgeting. If you look on the back wall, I have my Kleenex box presentation. And the yellow boxes are the general fund. The general fund's about $13 billion this year, and $6 billion, almost half of it, goes to K-12, those 6 yellow boxes of K-12. Then there's a $500 million of white other state funds. There's $5 billion of property tax that ends up in K-12, and there's $3 billion of blue boxes, which is the federal money. If you add that all up together, that's $14.5 billion a year in our K-12 school system for about 1.1 million students. As was mentioned, 20% of them are in charter schools. I would say put your first dollars in your first priority. There should be a priority of funding for the first priority, and that to me is teacher salaries. The state legislature and/or every school district should have to put an amount of its first dollars into a first priority bucket for teachers only, and they can't use those monies for anything else. And then you fund other priorities after that. And I'll get to another one here in a minute. It's called site-based budgeting.
Okay, thank you. Did you already have a turn? You looked at me like you were wanting to say some more, but there. Moving on, existing roads and highways are in various stages of disrepair. Living in rural Arizona, we all know that. Given we are experiencing significant population growth and traffic with increasing demands on our roads and highways, how do you propose to pay for the wear and tear and needed infrastructure replacement? Kenneth.
The problem we're having now is we're having to play catch up from the Janet Napolitano administration. My 4 years as Senate President were the first 4 years of Janet Napolitano as governor. When I left, there was more than $1 billion in the state's rainy day fund and cash balances, and we had a balanced budget. When the economy went down in 2008, she continued to raise the spending even though the money coming in was going down, and she got the state into a $3 billion deficit every year for almost 3 years in a row. And so they started stealing money from the white boxes, the other funds in state government. You'll see over on the far right, there's a box down there, half a box, it's called transportation. They started transferring money out of the funds that were supposed to be used for transportation over to the general fund to help balance the state budget. That will never happen when I'm in the state Senate. Because the dollars that we raise through gasoline and diesel taxes and our vehicle license plate fees have got to stay where they are intended, and that is to pay for our roads. But when I was term limited out of the Senate, one of our House members was a guy named Tom O'Halloran. Tom O'Halloran was
And he was a Republican then.
He was a Republican then, supposedly, but he came over, and that $1 billion that I left in the rainy day fund, he was one of the votes that Janet Napolitano got to spend those monies and put the state in that $3 billion a year deficit. Fortunately, we had Steve Pierce run 2 years later and knocked Tom O'Halloran off, and then he went to Congress and became a Democrat. But Tom O'Halloran and people who will vote with liberals as to how to misspend your money are why our roads are suffering so much now, and I will not let dollars be taken out of transportation for anything but transportation.
My answer is the same, in that we have to stop sweeping the HERF fund, the Highway User Revenue Fees Fund. I asked some city legislators, how do you do that? How do you prevent that? And I was told that that requires legislation. So to your point earlier, is there a bill I would like to hit the ground running with? Well, perhaps this is one. When you ask the Speaker of the House what committees you're the most qualified or passionate about, one of the four I would like to serve on is transportation, because I want to protect that money and have it use what it's intended for. And that's for rural Arizona in addition to Maricopa, because the great state of Maricopa has funding for their highways and roads. Whereas rural Arizona, we don't have that cash base to pull from. So we depend on those HERF funds, the Highway User Revenue Fees. So we need to stop that, keep it where it's at, and use it what it's for. I'd also like to look at, there's an unequal playing field right now that electric cars and hybrid cars don't pay that 18 cents per gallon gas for the Highway User Revenue Fund. So how can we make that fair to everybody that uses the roads? Because they still have 4 tires that run with rubber on the road and break down the road just as much as a gasoline or diesel powered car. So I would like to explore that. Not sure, I don't have the answers to everything, but here's where it sounds like we may have to do some balancing out of payment systems, if you will, for equal use of the highways and caring for them. The other thing we need to do in LD1 is protect that highway, the designated widening of I-17, because it's been allocated, but we don't want to lose that. So I'll have an eagle eye out for that. And that's why someone from rural Arizona, especially this district, needs to be sitting on that transportation committee and being very vocal about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Selena, we all understand that water is an issue statewide. How you, representing the varying water interests in cities and in counties?
Yeah, I always like to start with the Mark Twain quote that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting, because that sets the stage as to how important water is. You know, folks, when it comes to water, all we have is all we got. So we need to look at not only preserving, but finding new sources of water. The Arizona Drought Contingency Plan had triggers earlier than we thought. So we've got to, again, hit the ground running. I hate to keep saying that over and over, but we need legislators that understand water policy. You heard from the previous speakers, our water laws date back to the 1980s. We need updates. We currently have 3 sources of water in the state of Arizona. There's groundwater, surface water, and river water. Well, here in LD1 in Yavapai County, we sold our rights to the Colorado River water, so we depend solely on the ground and surface, the ground and surface water with the Verde, if you will, not the Colorado River water. So recently, the governor started his Water Authority Board, which sounded like a good idea initially, but the more I'm reading about it, I'm hearing, yeah, not so much. And that there's duplications of services, and there's also efficiencies that are being questioned. So I would keep an eye on that. All of us need to keep an eye on that. We need to look at sources of water. This will get your attention. The toilet to tap concept of treating effluent water is one. Recharging the water tables, stormwater diversion and storage. You heard earlier about desalination. I was talking to a gentleman earlier. We could reallocate our Colorado River water to the state, because this is not just an LD1 problem. We could reallocate our state water based on desalination plants, where we could trade, if you will, and then we're not transporting water. We could also encourage non-governmental organizations to encourage people to save water, to respect water. That's happening right now on the east side of this district. I'm part of the Citizens Water Advisory Group known as CWAG, and I hear some of the good work they're doing with the Verde River. They have what's called a river-friendly program, where they issue certifications for those that preserve and protect the Verde River. So instead of government oversight or government regulation, let's pull back and look at what can volunteers or non-governmental organizations do. And in this case, it's CWAG. Got some other ideas. Oh, we need to update the active management area. We have 5 in Arizona. The Prescott Active Management Area sits where the Big Chino Aquifer is. That water source, the Big Chino Water Ranch, is what feeds the Verde. So I always equate it to that the aquifer is like a tub, and the overflow valve, that hole, that feeds the verde. So if you starve the aquifer, you're going to lose the verde. The big deal is connecting water, surface and groundwater laws. That's outdated as well, so that has to be paid attention to.
Thank you. Ken?
I think we heard some very sound advice from the two governor candidates about water policy, deep water that we have in some states, desalinization, managing our forests better, would provide more water in our rivers and streams. Interestingly enough, we are using less groundwater in Arizona today than we did in 1970, when we had about 1.5 million people in the state. That's primarily because we converted so much citrus, cotton, other agriculture to homes, and per acre they use much less than some of the agricultural uses. So in many respects, we're in better shape, and I've heard Steve say this personally. It's not as dire as some people want people to believe as far as the amount of water that we have underground. We're using less of it than we did 50 years ago. But we need to be very wise. I think the desalinization is going to be an answer. I actually am very intrigued by one of the suggestions being forwarded by one of the U.S. Senate candidates, Mr. Lehman. He believes that, and this is true, the Colorado River Basin was over-promised when they assumed years ago that there would be 12.5 million acre-feet a year available for the 3 lower basin states. The Colorado River has not produced that amount of water for decades. He believes that it's probably going to include a cross-country pipeline to bring excess water out of the parts of the country that have water over here in a multi-state project to augment the resources that we have in the Colorado River Basin. So, as someone mentioned, when you're talking about water, I think Karen mentioned this, when you're talking about water, you got to think 50 years from now, not 5 months or 5 years. And fortunately, the Carl Haydens and the Barry Goldwaters and the Fannons and the others did that and gave us the Central Arizona Project. If we didn't have the Central Arizona Project right now, we probably have about 2.5 million people in this state, and we'd still be short of water. So we have to be wise with what we have, but look and be creative for new ways to use it wiser, manage our forests, and provide the solutions that we need for our children and grandchildren.
And I didn't have a rebuttal. I still have a rebuttal.
1 minute.
I'm cashing my card in here. I was able to get it out real quick at the end. We really need to connect groundwater and surface water legislation. That's the huge disconnect, and that's why we're seeing the struggle. When you study water policy in the state, I'm not sure why. I know Senator Regina Cobb in Mojave County has been working on that, but I'm not hearing that that's successful. The other thing we need to consider in Arizona is agriculture is 70% of our water usage. So let's talk to our cattlemen, let's talk to our ranchers, let's talk to our farmers. They probably have some great ideas on drought-resistant crops, how we, rather than flood irrigation, perhaps drip irrigation. So I want to talk to the subject matter experts, and you'll find that about me. And when I go to write legislation, I want to talk to those that bill is going to affect at the end of the day, because they're the experts. They have to live with the results of the laws we legislators live with, and that's a good example of one.
Okay, thank you. Once you're elected to take office, how will you make your decisions to vote on the bills? I know for a fact many legislators get the bill, they see who's voting for it, and that's how they do it. They do not read the bill. So how will you be doing it? And who starts this one? I think Ken does.
You have to read the bills. I made the mistake one time in my first year at the legislature. The Speaker of the House, very powerful, on the next to the last day of the session, introduced a bill that, if you read the data sheet that comes with each bill, it said it was a $10 million bill, and it was a pilot program to help create more cars that used fuel other than gasoline. It was the all fuels bill. It wasn't $10 million. It was a mess, and we had to work very hard to get it shut down immediately. So ever since then, I read every bill that I'm going to vote on. Now, that doesn't mean you have to read every bill in the legislature, because you're usually on 3, a legislator will probably be on 3 of the 11 to 12 committees in the Senate. The House will probably have 15 or 16 committees, but you're on 3 committees. Every bill in those committees I read front to back, because I have other legislators in my caucus who are not on the committees that I'm at that are expecting me to read those bills. Now, once a bill makes it through a committee and goes to the floor, you read every bill, because that's when you have the opportunity in what's called the Committee of the Whole. All 30 senators on the floor of the Senate, as if it was a big committee. That's when you have your opportunities to make amendments and changes to bills that went through committees that you weren't even on. You didn't have a chance to make an amendment to a bill that you're not on the committee that it went through. So as bills come to you, whether they're in the committees that you serve on, you read every one. When it gets to the floor, you read every one. And then it comes up for the last read, what's called third read. And so now you'll also watch other legislators. You learn who you can trust. And that weighs on your decision, but you cannot just vote on something because, well, Lucy normally votes the way I do, so I'll just vote the way she does. You cannot do that. You can let that influence you a little bit. If I see a red button up there from Steve Pierce on something having to do with natural resources or water, that's a flag to me that I got to be watching that bill extra careful.
The reason you're hearing this question is we recently had a down at the legislature, and a bill was passed, and unbeknownst to the 90 legislators, it had a section in it that would have dissolved our precinct committeeman system. It was an error on 90 people's parts, but what it came to at the end of the day was, because it didn't have the red stripe or the blue for new text, it didn't get caught. So lessons learned. The one thing I remember about my grandfather serving in the state house for 17 years, he chaired appropriations for most of that, so he held the purse of the governor. But he was always reading, just a ferocious reader. So when I look at bills, and I've been studying legislation for several years now, and I teach the request to speak, so I have to be able to dissect a bill, I think of them as like mini dissertations. And I have a lot of experience teaching others to write dissertations, and I've written them myself, so I can break down the content and go through them pretty fast. So this is actually, sounds a little nerdy, but this is what I love to do on my free time, is read bills and teach others to comment on them publicly. Don't laugh, I know, I need a life, here it is. Thank you. I'm also good at doing the research, that quantitative, qualitative data, to know that is the benefit risk or the benefit harm ratio of this bill worth the vote. So you asked how would I vote? It's also weighing if this bill has more good in it than bad. And then I already mentioned the part where I want to speak to subject matter experts, those that understand how they would be affected at the end of the day about legislation. A good example is border control, border security. I want to know from those that are on the border that are going to be doing this job and carrying out these bills and these laws, is this written correctly? Do I have it down right? So it's partly doing the research. Representative Wynn made a good point. If you're doing this job right, it's a year-round job. When you're not in session, you're crafting those bills, you're talking to people, you're getting support, you're working in teams. So I'm excited about that piece, actually, so I'm a policy wonky, I guess.
Thank you. That concludes our questions. I have 2 yes or no additional. And I will, Ken, you know this, but you can't promise that you're going to do anything down there unless you go down there and you get in the Senate 15 other people to agree with you and 30 in the House. So it's not an easy cakewalk to get it done. It's a lot of work. And sometimes you have to reach across the aisle and get somebody to come in and help you. So if another variant of COVID comes to Arizona and the numbers of reported cases spike, would you support mask-wearing candidates? I'm sorry. Mask-wearing mandates or business closures?
No.
No. we explain a little? Because the devastation from these mandates was just, we're suffering from that still, mentally, physically, emotionally. No.
I'll take 30 seconds and finish my other thing about how to make K-12 funding more efficient. One idea is called site-based budgeting. Instead of sending the money to the school board, and then they decide to pay administrative fees and what's left goes down to the schools, send the money to the school first, and let the site-based council, which are parents, teachers, and the principal, decide how much money they need at that school level for teacher salaries and children's education, and then what they have left is available to pay for administration at the school board level. So flip the funding and put the money at the school first, and the excess flows up for administration at the school district.
Okay, thank you. Last question. Ken, you're first. Are you willing to vote? Oh, you were first last time. He just spoke up out of turn. It's all right. Are you willing to vote to remove current social issues and gender studies from K-12 public school curriculum? Are you willing to vote to remove current social issues and gender studies from K-12 public school curriculum?
Absolutely. We are not doing a good enough job on reading, writing, math, science, history. We've got to get rid of critical race theory and anything else, gender identity, anything else that distracts students from the main curriculum. I will absolutely vote to remove that.
Same here. Critical race theory teaches racism. I believe in what Martin Luther King said, that we should judge people by the content of their character and not their skin color. It's really, really important that we take care of this issue. Now, I'm kind of disappointed in our current legislators in that they couldn't pass the ban on critical race theory. It was turned into a House and Senate concurrent resolution. So my understanding is it's going to be on the ballot now, put out to you voters to make the decision because, again, Senator Pierce mentioned the razor-thin majority. Apparently they couldn't get enough agreement. I don't know how. This one seems really obvious, black and white. But they couldn't get the votes, so they pushed it on you, the voters. So we have a couple citizens initiatives that became propositions. They'll get their prop number in July, and then you'll have a chance to speak on these bills as well.
Thank you. Thank you both. Appreciate it. I think that's the end of our questions. Somebody mentioned something about Mark Twain, and something I had on my wall when I was in the Senate. Never argue with stupid people. They'll drag you down to their level and beat you every time.
Sure. Well, as I alluded to earlier, I think the best way you can predict what someone's going to do in the future is what did they do in the past. I had the privilege of representing this district in the state senate for 8 years. 4 was under Governor Jane D. Hull, and 4, the years that I was Senate president, was with Janet Napolitano. Listen to what we got done during the 4 years that I was Senate president. We balanced the budget all 4 years. We did the largest tax cut in the history of the state of Arizona at that time. We reduced income taxes for all Arizonans by 10%, and we eliminated the state property tax. There used to be a line on your property tax of monies that went to the state. That's been gone since we eliminated it back then. We passed comprehensive legislation to combat illegal immigration, high-tech radar detection systems, and the National Guard at the border. $55 million to state and local law enforcement for border interdiction, 100 new DPS officers, eliminating sanctuary policies, and tougher employer sanctions on those that hire illegals. As far as our veterans, during those 4 years, we permanently eliminated and exempted military and National Guard pay from state income tax. If you're in the military or the National Guard in Arizona, since 2003, you do not pay income tax in Arizona. I took the lead on creating the World War II memorial down there with the gun barrels from the battleships Arizona and Missouri. An $800,000 project. We did not spend one dime of taxpayer money. It was completely funded by volunteers and by donations. As Secretary of State, I ran 12 successful and secure elections during my 6 years. And I worked against voter fraud. We prosecuted people who were voting illegally. And that's the kind of performance that you will see in the future, because that's the kind of performance I brought you and served you with in the past. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Steve.
Folks, at the end of the day, when you make the choice on the team you want to represent you, it's not about me, but it's about we, and it's about us. If you're fed up with status quo or career politicians and you want an advocate, I would ask you to go to my website and look at the knowledge, skill, and abilities I can bring to this position. If you're looking for someone that's engaged in their communities, then I'm your candidate. Do you want someone that's ready to go on the offense or that just plays defense? I'm ready to take on that load and sponsor legislation. Here's where actions speak louder than words. Again, ask the candidates, what are you doing actively about these issues now, rather than just talk, talk, talk. As you can see, we didn't get much time here, but I'm passionate about conservative causes. I bring fresh energy and a new perspective to this position. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. But I can't get into office without you voting in the primary. So if you remember anything about tonight, my name is Selena Bliss. I'm running for the State House. All you have to remember is put Bliss in the House. Thank you.
Thank you. This gives me some round of applause. And also to our governor candidates over here. And thank you for having me stand up here in front of you. And I'm giving